Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. And for those that are already in the night where you are, we won't tell you good night yet because you have to stay on for the program. You are welcome to your program, our program. It's Yoruba Referendum Committee on the seats. And remember, the topic we're dealing with is True Federalism, the journey so far, and that is related to our dear country, Nigeria. Alabafemi Odedeye is on the seat as usual, and I would like to say hello to you viewers.
Okay, thank you for having me, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all our listeners, and we appreciate your tuning in or watching it at any later time, and we'll appreciate your comments. So I thank you, and I thank our host for inviting me. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So we'll just kick off from where we stopped last week. The question we were dealing with last week at the tail end of last week's program is the question whether agitation for true federalism has failed. And Alagbafemi Odedeye was taking us through some events. And I also think that what's today's date?
9, August 9.
9. So it was yesterday, which coincided with a major event in Western region. And of course, once it's Western region, it's Nigeria. And if it's Western region, if it's Nigeria, it's Yoruba. And of course, all the other affiliated nationalities. So Alagbafemi Odedeye, let's kick off from where we stopped last week. As agitation for true federalism failed in Nigeria in putting pressure on political office holders to reconstitute the country along ethnic nationality lines.
Thank you. I won't say it has failed, but I will say there is a detour in the sense of the current administration. Now, all along, let's even take it from 1999, or each successive government tries to tinker with the constitution and federalism and all that, and they set up committees on this and that, and nothing came out of it.
Yeah.
So now, the current president and most members of his team were directly involved in those attempts. And I recall even when Jonathan was president, there was a meeting between Jonathan and the then ACN, comprising the current president Tinubu, Baba Akonde, and some other ACN leaders, where they presented their own concept of federalism to Jonathan. And according to the reports, they had some kind of agreement. But eventually, when Jonathan had his confab, nothing came out of it. So now that they are in power, that is what I would call the Tinubu segment, are now in power, what I can see and what has been happening is not the failure of true federalism, but a detour. That detour now allows for self-correction, in the sense that what are these detour? We have mentioned it before. What they call local government autonomy is unheard of in any federal system, where the central control the funds that goes directly to the local government, no matter the excuses they want to provide. It's not done. It's an aberration. That's number one. Number two, we've talked about the various development commissions and all the rest. Number three, we talk about what they are talking about now about state police, which they are taking as a bureaucratic measure that, okay, we have states, therefore states should have police. But that's not the meaning of state police. State police means a federative unit should be able to police itself. So all this going back and forth about having some kind of National Assembly, IGP, and all the rest, it doesn't make any, it's an aberration. So if the federal government of President Tinubu wants to do anything for the whole of Nigeria, they can do it, but it can only be in conjunction with true federalist policies. So if they want to help the local government, they can create grants and stuff like that. But the local government is under the purview of the federating units. So that's why I said it's a detour. And it leaves room for correction because that detour shows that there is a big hole that needs to be filled. And it allows advocates of true federalism to fill that hole by pointing out all these defects, all these aberrations that we have. So the issue now is whether the advocates of true federalism are comfortable with the detour, or they are going to push beyond the detour and then get back to the road again. You know, when you go on a detour, you make a side tour and then come back to the main road. So we need to come back to the main road of true federalism and not make the detour our permanent road. So that would be my short answer to that.
Answer. Okay. So we'll take it that the agitation has not failed.
No.
But could I ask if the spirit and the energy of the agitators before now, can we compare it to the spirit and the energy of those that are agitating for it now?
No, in the sense that, previously, and that's why the detour is important to understand that concept of the detour. Previously, no government was able or capable of responding to the agitations. So the agitations become more energized because no one is responding to it. So, but now you have a government that is responding to it in its own way by creating the detour. So now the agitation now, the onus is now on the agitators, the advocates. Let me put them, is a more respectable term, advocates, because all kinds of people agitate for all kinds of things. So the advocates at this point needs to now take a step back and say, okay, we've spent so much energy all these years advancing these things. None has been responsive. The only one that is responsive is taking us on a detour. So we need to come back and re-strategize how we will come back to the main road. Now, they may have a problem because, any problem can be resolved anyway, because the current administration is pouring all its resources on that detour. And for most agitators, it's like, oh yes, we can do it gradually now. He has started it. So when the next administration comes, we can improve on it. How do you improve on the center controlling your local government? You can't improve on it because it is already there unless you change the nature of that center. So if you allow this to go on as an example of incremental federalism, you are still going to confront a regime or administration in the future that will now start asking for what should be asked for now. So in fact, I will modify my earlier statement to say that the onus is on both the advocates and the current administration to come back to the route of true federalism, because all this incremental stuff that expecting a future administration to abide with is not the way to go. So the agitators or the advocates now have a double mandate to prevail on the current administration to reverse course or redirect itself to true federalism and then make true federalism the focal point of their advocacy at this point. That doesn't mean the current administration will not try to get back into power, elections and all the rest. Yeah, they can pursue all that. But then what we are saying is that the detour that we are on is not going to be helpful in the long run because it is strengthening the center. And once the center is strengthened and Tinubu leaves office as president, anything can happen. Okay, let's just use a simple example. You have is it Kwakwanso and the BNDC saying that they have an agreement to spend only one term. Okay, for discussion purposes, let's assume that they win the 2027 election. Now, do you expect such a ticket to continue with what Tinubu is doing when the president already promised, the prospective president already signed an agreement that he will spend only 4 years? Maybe that means that president is just going to be a placeholder, just be there for 4 years. When it comes back to our turn, we can do anything we want. That is what the agreement means. So you have all those things that even if President Tinubu wins second term, which we hope he will win the second term, and continues along this trajectory, all that needs to happen is for an anti-federalist to become president in 2031 and then reverse most of these things or strengthen that central hold, because they won't reverse it, they will merely strengthen it. So local government, this and that, they will now make it, in fact, they want to make it part of the constitution now, not just a judicial pronouncement. So they will now strengthen it and make it permanent. And then those of us from Ibadan local government will start wondering, why should Abuja be giving us money for, if we want this? Abuja says no. I'm talking about Ibadan local government. I'm not talking about other local governments. So, so or any, things like that. So it takes away your capacity, our capacity to even determine how we want to develop ourselves. Now, whether the governors are doing this or that is not even the problem now. The problem is, how do we want to develop our own society? What do we have in our local government? How do we go about it? Once your money is controlled from the center, then they can tell you how to go about it. And that's the problem. So at this point, it is both the advocates and the administration that will now have to work it out. And that's why we at the Yoruba Referendum Committee are not keeping quiet, by telling the administration and those that listen to us and those we expect to listen to us that the way the administration is going about it is not the way. There is nothing like incremental federalism. You are either federalist and then try to patch up whatever problems they have, or you are not. You can. The local government is the best example I can use. And we talked about the railways the other time. When the the Southwest Development Commission has its own dreams and its own ambitions, fantastic ambitions, to create a regional railway system. And then the Nigerian Railway said, no, you can't do that. You have to use our this and that. And that was the end of the matter. So what they call incremental federalism means is actually underdeveloping us, because we are not controlling our development matrix. We have to abide with what has been established, though. It's not new things. So unless we want to kid ourselves, we know that the North in general, or what the Fulani or Hausa Fulani or whatever, controls the country. We know it. They control it by the census, by the local government allocation. How many local governments should be where, how many states should be where, and all the rest of it. So they have already created their own control mechanism. And then within that mechanism, you now want to introduce incremental federalism. It's not possible as long as that control is there. When Tinubu was governor of Lagos and Obasanjo was president, Obasanjo conducted a census which was incongruent with natural order anyway. So Tinubu had to oppose it and conduct his own Lagos exercise to show that the Obasanjo figures are wrong. And that has been the experience with Nigeria since 1953, when they started conducting official censuses. So they conduct the census by the center, the federal government, and allocate all the population and everything to the north so that they can retain control. And then, of course, certain politicians will object. That was how they objected to the 1962 or 63 constitution, census, which didn't get anywhere. And since then, that's been the process. So now, you now have a president who believes in federalism, whether incremental or at once, so regardless. Now wanting to conduct a census along the same lines. So you now have a National Population Commission that will now conduct a census. Now, let's say the best scenario, you now conduct a census under President Tinubu that is contrary to all the censuses that have been taken since 1950. And then say, there are more population in the south than in the north. What do you think will happen? There will be a crisis from the north. They will say, no, it is because you are Yoruba, you are doing this, you want to cheat, and then they will start fighting. When the simple thing, a census is supposed to be a marker for development, economic and socio-political development. Okay, so let the constituent units take their own censuses. So even if you look at it from a zonal thing, which is not what we are advocating, but to make it easier to understand. So if a zone says that there are 100 million people, as long as they can take care of the 100 million people, let them be anything. If a zone says there are 10 million, because the resources we have cannot take more than this, so this is fine. Then there will be no conflict on censuses. There will be no conflict of sharing resources, because when you conduct your own internal census, you are conscious of the reasons for it. That is, you are not using it as a bargaining chip to get more allocation from the center, or to get more local governments, or to get more assembly seats. You are using it to know that, okay, we have 5 million people. Now we have granites or whatever as the only resource we have. Okay, if we sell it abroad, this is how much we make, and blah, blah, blah. How do we sell it? How do we make all the resources make, things like that? So there will be more responsibility for the numbers than what is currently happening. So all these things, when you take them together, you will discover that what they call incremental federalism is just, we have to stop it. We have to challenge it. We have to redirect the direction that it is going.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alagba Femi Odedi. I think in line with what you've said, because it would seem like the sort of agitation we have before, the vocal pressure and meetings are really no longer happening. Like you said, probably because there's a president there that seems to be doing something. But then if they're not taking the right path, probably most of those agitators should still get back on board just to ensure that the things are done properly. Like you said, it's a detour so that they can get right back into the road. Let's quickly talk about the 8 August 1957 events. What was it and how important is that event to the political dispensation that we are in now?
Yeah, it's fundamental. Okay, even before 1957, we know, there were agitations for independence and this and that, and then they had the elections where they had in 1951 in the regional parliamentary elections, where the AG won, where Afenifere became a political motion because the action group says freedom for life, freedom for all, life more
Like,
abundant. That was the campaign slogan. And then it was translated into Yoruba as Afenifere, freedom for all, life more abundant. So, but Chief Awolowo became the leader of government business. So throughout the negotiations for independence and all that, the whole question of self-government also came up. So in the process, they had different constitutions, Littleton and all that. And then because in 1953, the action group moved the motion through Enahoro and that Nigeria should become independent by 1956, which was rejected by the North. And then, they started negotiating and all that. So now the British government was forced to give self-government to the regions. And then Awo became the premier, which is different from, because the leader of government business is more or less accountable to the British Parliament.
okay.
But when he became premier, he became accountable to our own parliament, in the West and in Nigeria also. So it became pivot because that power now solidified what the action group had been building since 1951. And because it is called self-government, it was an act of decolonization. Because when you say when you are under colonial rule, even if you are the leader of government business, you are just leader of government colonial business. You can be still doing what you are doing, but that sense of independence will not be there. So when you now have self-government, you are now saying, okay, we can govern ourselves. You are telling the colonial people that we can govern ourselves. You are also telling yourself that you can govern yourself. So on that day, when they made that declaration, it was like a rebirth, what I would call being born again. That, okay, here we are, formally, we can formally govern ourselves. And like we have been saying, we can see the evidence since that time. And even moving from there, that was what led Chief Awolowo and the Action Group to go to the Federal House of Representatives in 1961 and say, hey, wait a minute, we need more regions like our own in the rest of the country so that we can have a balanced federation. And before then, just to show you how important it was, by the time that we got independence in 1960, there was what they call the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact between the federal government of that time, that is the NPC and NCNC coalition, and the British government to allow British military bases and all the rest in Nigeria. It was the Awolowo opposition that led the opposition to it, that no, we don't want that kind of thing in Nigeria. So all these things were because of that. The North, the NPC at that time, didn't obtain a self-government until 1959 because they didn't want it. But let's leave that aside. So, but I just brought that up to show that the essence of self-governance is also the essence of true federalism that we are talking about today. So if Britain, of course, we can say they are foreign and all this and all that, can allow us, or we obtained, not allow because they fought for it too,
Okay.
we got self-government under colonial power. Why is it that under our own government, we don't have self-government? Now, the fact that you vote for your governor or local government chairman is not the issue, because even under, is it Babangida or Abacha, they voted for some local government chairman. So the issue is who controls your governance structure. So when the center now says, if you want to contest any election in Nigeria, you must register a party that will have offices all over the country. That is not self-governance. In 1957, when we got the self-governance, the action group, although it was a national countrywide party, but it was essentially a Western region and Yoruba affair. Its center of gravity is in the Western region and in the Yoruba area of Western region. They had people like the leader of opposition in the Northern House of Assembly at that time was an action group, but he was also a Yoruba Papa Joseph Olawoyin from Ofa, because they had already made Ofa part of Northern region. Otherwise, Ofa would have been part of Western region if they had allowed the plebiscite in 1958. That is, the coalition between the NCNC and NPC prevented that plebiscite from taking place so that Ofa can become part of Western region. So the center of gravity matters. And that is what self-governance means, because it now enables you to formalize your mode of governance. Unlike what we have now, like I said, you have to have offices all over the place. To even contest for any office, you have to go to some other places to seek validation. Leaving your people low, you will go to this and that and start talking to people and forming. So all kinds of stuff like that. So that, because within the context of decolonization, self-governance or self-government matters, because it allows you to come into your own, to say, yes, we now have political power free from interference as from colonial authority, and then we can navigate our ways through our future. That was what it meant at that time, and is very relevant for us today, because the colonial contraption that we have as Nigeria is not even controlled by us, because it was not defined by us. That's why we are still talking about true federalism today, that the contest around that time between the AG, NCNC, and NPC was about federalism. The action group and AWO stood for true federalism at that point. The NCNC said, no, is what they are, we are one, we have no this and that. And of course, the NPC didn't even care, said, okay, as long as we are in control, we can go along with it. And they put them in control, and they are in control, and they are still in control. So the fact that we got self-governance at that point shows that it is something that we need to be able to move forward in our quest for federalism today.
All right. Thank you very much, Alagbafemi or Dedi. So from the 50s, across the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and that is where we are today.
Yeah.
Still agitating for true federalism. Because of our time, I will just ask this question. Is a very simple one. Do you see a reconstitution, assuming President Bola Ahmed Tinubu secured his second term? Are you positive that something might happen before the end of that second term?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, in the sense that, I'm not a seer or those who predict the future. But what we can say is that whether he wins or not, the trajectory for true federalism exists. Whether he wants to do it or not, the need for true federalism exists. So there's no way he can run away from it, and there's no way he can only run to it. He cannot run away from it. That's why what he's doing now, which is what they call incremental federalism, because there's nothing federalist about it. But what they call incremental federalism is not going to address that problem. It will just compound it. So whether he wants to do it or he doesn't want to do it, the onus is, like we said earlier, is on us, those who believe in it, to keep pushing it based on the contradictions that it will create. Whether we can now transform that into a political movement to challenge whoever is in power is a different question entirely. And that's the problem that the advocates have been having. If we sit down to talk about true federalism, we can analyze it for 30 hours non-stop. We will have our reasons, our critique, our solutions, and everything. We can rationalize it anyhow. And people have done it so many times. But the one question they have failed to answer is, how do you transform your reasoning into practical political action? How do we transform our reasoning, which is very solid, which is very sound, into concrete political action? Because you are now dealing with politicians who will, like we used to mention Akeredolu before, when he challenged the Yoruba nation people that, look, I got my own legitimacy from the elections, from the people that elected me. Where is yours?
Yes.
So that's the question that we have to address, that these are politicians who will say, I won elections, they voted for me, I had my programs, and just like President Tinubu is doing, and I'm pursuing it. And I'm pursuing it. So I'm okay. Now you come around and say, no, but that's not the way to go about it. Then he will ask you, okay, who voted for you? Then you will say, but you don't allow me, because of the conditions you made to contest elections is too much. But then he will say, but I went through it, I contested elections, I won. Whereas now, I'm not saying we should now emulate their process, but the contradictions in the Nigerian system is so acute that no one can run away from it. That's why the President Tinubu himself is talking about his own federalist approach. I'm doing it incrementally because he can't run away from it. So he has to provide something to show that he's doing something about it. So that is our own challenge. How do we now use those contradictions, which we did not create? It's not because we wanted it to, it's because it is there. We didn't create it. But how do we now make it into our own political weapon that the politicians will also have to contend with? And that's why we keep talking about the Yoruba referendum as a mobilizing force. That, and to connect it with even the self-government thing, that the referendum gives you the capacity, gives us the capacity for self-governance. And if we mobilize around it, and that will allow us to stop talking about incremental federalism. It will put federalism itself on the front burner. But now when the politician says, when they say local government autonomy, because the governor is corrupt, therefore the center should control, give money to the local government, they are telling us that we have no right to govern ourselves. If our governor is corrupt, we can deal with our governors if we have the
Exactly.
capacity to do so. It is not for anybody to see. Sorry, the one sitting in Abuja himself, don't they have corruption in Abuja itself? So how can the center of corruption now tell us that someone is corrupt, therefore he can control how he disposes money? I'm not saying Tinubu is corrupt. I'm just talking about the system that he operates in. So that is the issue. That is the whole concept of self-governance. And that is what true federalism is. And that is what the advocates will now have to contend with. How do we transform our advantage? Because it's an advantage, because the problem is not running away. It is our advantage. How do we transform it into a tool of legitimacy?
Right.
And that is why we are talking about Yoruba referendum as the tool of that legitimacy. And then that is what we will now use to challenge our politicians to say, okay, now they are even talking, when they talk about constitutional this and that every 4 years, they will alter this, they will alter that. They are already talking of what they will alter in the next the next administration. When they haven't finished altering this one, they are already talking about altering another one. So instead of doing all that, these are weapons that we can use to mobilize ourselves so that the politicians will now have to be confronted that their own legitimacy is also faulty. The only legitimacy that is valid and can be valid and legal is the referendum. And that is a referendum by the constituent nationalities, not just any referendum from anywhere. So if we can rally around that, it becomes our entry into the political arena where we can challenge both the president and the politicians on the validity of their own legitimacy. And then it becomes a political battle. But if we can't do that, or if we are unable to do that, we'll just be like outsiders looking in. Because even in the best of times, okay, Tinubu spends his next 4 years, and let's even say another person like Tinubu comes in, becomes president, he will also say he's doing incremental federalism, and he will be controlling, centralizing the most essential aspects of the whole thing. And then where are we going to be? We'll just be on the outside looking in. And then over time, federalism will not even become an issue anymore, because they will say, but we have achieved it. We have a development commission. We have money going to the center, local government. We have state police. We have this and that. So what are you complaining about? But the essence of your being as a human being, as a Yoruba or Ijo or anybody, has already been destroyed in the process. Because all along the journey, you will lose your language. Once you lose your language, that's the end of everything. And that is what Africa has to contend with.